Mock Draft 2 is here for Since the Sandbox. 2 weeks away from the draft. Going pick by pick, breaking down the scenarios, what the right fits are, some potential trade destinations, and how this is all going to work out on draft night, April 26th. Believe it's April 25th, 26th, 27th.
My birthday, man.
So, oh, shit. Okay, so you
right
definitely know.
I know. And for my birthday, the Patriots are going to get 5 fifth-round picks for their 3.
Shit. So we'll be celebrating Twon's birthday. We'll be celebrating the draft and the new NFL season all in one. But this is our first mock together for the season.
And I've done about 16 on PFF so far. So
okay.
I'm really excited, man. I'm really excited. I'm going to throw a couple curveballs at you just to keep your ass on your toes.
I know you are.
But that's what this is about. Like, the NFL draft is so unpredictable. There could be so many trades going on, but we're going to go 1 through 32, Steve, of just who are the best players in the draft? Where do they best fit with the player or with the teams at their positions?
Absolutely. Twon, first overall pick, the Chicago Bears. Since the Patriots are third, we'll give you first. So we're going to keep this order. Every other pick, we'll break it down. Chicago Bears are on the clock.
At 1, Bo Nix. Just kidding. Just kidding, guys. It's going to be Caleb Williams. It's 100% him. The Bears have pretty much said it's Caleb Williams. There's no smokescreen going on here.
No.
He's the most talented guy in the draft based off of what we've seen so far. You can argue that there are other talented players at the position, but based off of how he's been hyped over the past 2 years, he has to be the number 1 pick. Chicago has completely built around him. I think he's in the position for the most success just because of what Chicago has done in the past 2 off seasons. Now, I understand people are going to talk about, oh, well, his personality. He's not a winner. He's a diva. He paints his nails pink. Like, sure, that's suspect. But at the end of the day, he does have the most talent, in my opinion. I think he has the highest chance to succeed, and Chicago has set him up to be nothing other than successful. If the Chicago Bears don't pull through, and Caleb Williams isn't successful, he has nobody to blame other than himself. Chicago has set it up for him. They kept their coach for the past couple years. They got Keenan Allen. They got DJ Moore. They got Swift at running back who can catch the ball. I'm sure they'll have, Roshan Johnson still there to be able to run downfield. Their offensive line's getting better. They invested last year in Darnell Wright, and they have another pick after one that they can invest anywhere they want. The defense played well at the end of last season. Chicago Bears are looking up and up, and they get their quarterback here at 1, Caleb Williams, no doubt in my mind.
Wow, Twon starts the mock draft off right.
We're cutting promos in the mock draft.
So at 2, we're going to bring the energy. I'm going Drake Maye here for the Washington Commanders, the Washington football team, the Washington Reds, whatever Washington team you want to reference them as. But I think a lot of this has to go back to the move of getting rid of Sam Howell, going in a different direction. Obviously, he's in Seattle now, and that's a good scenario for him. Like, I think that's a solid fit, and I think he has an opportunity to really compete to take that over this year. The reason why I think that move happened is Sam Howell and Drake Maye are boys. Like, I just don't think that they would have got the best out of each other when they were sitting there competing, and you also don't want to, ruin a friendship over, a job like that. Yeah. I think there were some questions on, can Sam Howell help groom Drake Maye if that's the direction? But I also just feel like Sam Howell's like that competitor that would probably want to push for that role and wouldn't want to just hand that off. Also, I'm going in the Drake Maye direction because conversations that I've heard, Jayden Daniels wasn't overly excited on those Washington meetings, and I don't know if that's to try and aim in a specific direction. Washington might not care about that by any means. I think the skill set is what you're looking for in a quarterback in today's game. But I feel like he wants to go in a different direction. That was communicated. Drake Maye here at 2, and that'll leave the Patriots with a tough decision at 3.
It is a very, very tough decision here. And before I jump into 3, the other thing I want to say about Washington is Washington's got to turn this around.
Yeah.
Right? They really got to turn this around. They have a chance, new ownership, new coach. They really got a chance to make a splash, turn things around here. You got to have a quarterback that wants to be there. I think Drake Maye is willing to be there. If Jayden Daniels is the talks aren't going as well, don't take the risk. Get someone that's comfortable there. And realistically, I think Drake Maye has an insane ceiling just as much as Jayden Daniels.
Yeah.
Maybe more. We'll see. I don't entirely know. We're going to tell from the NFL draft and pretty much from the season. But, I mean, it's a great pick here for Washington at 2.
Do you have any concern about Dan Quinn developing a quarterback?
I do. But who's their OC right now?
They got Oh, man.
Not Kingsbury, right?
Yeah.
It is Kingsbury. Yeah. I love the – I don't think Dan Quinn's really going to be too much involved in the Drake
yeah,
May. Like, I
yeah.
think he's going to be there as the coach. But I think in terms of developing a quarterback, you got Cliff Kingsbury. That puts you in an awesome spot. Steve at 3, realistically, I think if Drake May goes at 2, I think the Patriots want Drake May more than they want Jayden Daniels.
Do you?
I do.
Why?
I do. It just...
I don't think so.
I don't know how to justify it. I think that regardless, someone's going to need to sit behind Jacoby Brissett, and I just don't know if the Patriots are looking to build around a more mobile quarterback than they are a pocket passer. I think they want that. I think they want to keep a similar style. Now, I do think that, as we've seen this year, I think the Crafts are actually generationally bad owners, and they've been completely covered up by Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. And I'm starting to see that more and more, and it makes me a little nervous for Mayo. I think that they're more invested in Drake May because I think they see more potential in Drake May, and they see Jayden Daniels as more of a risk when they need to make a right decision. Sure, Drake May turns the ball over, but Drake May has so much upside, and I get Jayden Daniels does too. But for me, it's almost more volatile with Jayden Daniels than it is Drake May.
Okay, so in a scenario like this, there's been some conversations about a trade. I don't think that this organization is looking to do it, but I think that there have been some conversations linked to still keep the Patriots in the top 10 to help a team move up. In this scenario where if the Pats did love May and they weren't able to get the guy that they loved, maybe they do trade back and can just address wide receiver. Do you think that this could be a spot where the Pats and Giants could flip?
What Pats and Giants could flip? I think there's another team. I think Vegas could move up there. The spot that I would want to see, I would say the best deal that the Patriots could get is Minnesota.
Yeah.
You get 11, you get 23, maybe a first next year, maybe a player involved. I think that would be awesome. And people forget, like, I really like KJ Osborne. He just signed with the Patriots. If you can get 2 of those picks from the Vikings and then maybe get a first next year, maybe get a second next year, if you're just willing to get the best deal,
yeah,
I think you set them up in a really good spot and you can really start to build that team around at 11.
Would you be happy with that?
I would. I would actually be happy with
that?
And I would say, you know what, at 11 and 23, fuck a quarterback.
Wide receiver or offensive line.
Let's roll with Brissett for the year. Let's, have a mid-year this year. I get it. And if we overperform, that's awesome. Let's set ourselves up for Shedeur Sanders next year.
Yeah.
Let's set ourselves up for a quarterback next year when you can really build well in such a deep draft this year at O-line and wide receiver, which is what they need most.
I like it.
But Steve, no trade. It's about to get real hot in here.
Oh man, take it off. Take it.
It's about to get real hot in here because at number 3, I think the Patriots, I'm going to give Marvin Harrison Jr. over Jayden Daniels. I think that the need for wide receiver is so desperate, and I think that the need for quarterback, like, you have Brissett, and I actually do think really highly on Brissett as a game-managing veteran quarterback that can just get you the amount of wins that you need to not look as bad as they did this year.
Yeah.
I think he's a drastic improvement from Mack and Zappe. If Zappe even sniffs starting quarterback, I'm going to lose my fucking mind unless he improved like crazy. And I think that the best way for the Pats to attack here, if they're not trading this pick back, which I wholeheartedly believe if Drake May's not there, they will trade back, Marvin Harrison.
Okay.
Get yourself the best wide receiver in the draft, a guy that's going to be a generational talent, the guy that will, hot take, we're calling it early, Marvin Harrison Jr. is my number 1 wide receiver drafted this year that's going to end up in the Hall of Fame.
Okay. Love that coming out right away. Before he even stepped on the field.
Before he even said he's a Hall of Famer. Don't matter. Watched him play one time in person at Penn State and was fucking mesmerized.
Right. No, I mean, an experience like that could sell you on a player, though. Like, let's just say
it's insane, dude.
But with this top 3, there is no way in hell the Arizona Cardinals are not picking up the phone right now. Or other organizations are not picking up the phone right now and trying to figure out why Jayden Daniels is still on the board.
Yep.
This is 100% in this scenario with this top 3, a pick that would get traded, whether it's to the Giants at 6 or whether it's to one of these teams in 9-14 looking to move up and make a drastic impact to their organization, their franchise. Now, here's what I will say. Without moving the 4th overall pick, Arizona already has 3 picks in the top 35.
Yep.
So in prior mock drafts that I was doing, I was like, oh my God, this is an easy spot for Arizona to move back. But knowing that they still have a pick at pick 35, they pick again at 27, I think that they actually want to stack up and get some players. Like, we don't always need to just get the pieces, knowing that there's players that are going to need to prevent us from being in this scenario going forward. So realistically, I think if this was the case, the Giants would try and move up 2, even if they had to give up like a 3rd and maybe like a 2nd pick next year. to try and get Jayden Daniels, and I would be okay with that knowing it was Daniels or knowing it was Maye and it was at 4. I'm not giving up 3 first-round picks to move up in the top 6. Absolutely not. I do think that this is a wide receiver pick here for Arizona. I think MHJ, if Jayden Daniels goes to the Pats, is the pick here for Arizona. But I still think that the next highest player on the board, you could see here, I rank these guys as my top prospects. Malik Neighbors is 3 on my entire list, over other quarterbacks, over Maye, over Daniels, over Odunze still. I think he's a really gifted pass catcher. LSU has been producing wide receivers for such a long time now. And I do think that this is a pick that'll go in that direction, but I think this is likely a scenario where Arizona would strongly listen. Neighbors is going to be the pick, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was, a Minnesota, a Giants, a Denver, knowing that Daniels or McCarthy was still available, that they would go here. Malik Neighbors for Arizona here at 4.
I'm 100% with you. I don't think there's a world in which Arizona doesn't trade out if there's still a quarterback on the board here. Even if there is a quarterback on, I still think they're looking to trade out. So,
do you think if it's just J.J. McCarthy at 4 available, that's still a pick that would get moved, or do you think he might just get bypassed?
I think it could be. I just don't think the compensation would be there, though. I think if it's Jayden Daniels, the compensation, as we can both probably agree, is significantly higher than if it's J.J. McCarthy.
Yes.
For some reason, J.J. McCarthy has rocketed up everyone's fucking draft boards because he just had the Zach Wilson treatment. I'm not just reading Instagram comments, guys. It's literally exactly what happened. But that leaves me here with 5. And again, another team that I see trading, Steve.
Yes, 100%.
We could look at 3 trades in the top 5 here. Seriously.
Yeah.
Pats, Zona, and the Chargers, regardless of who gets taken, I think you could see that situation happen.
For sure.
But if the Chargers aren't making a trade here, I think they're going to build up that O-line. I know there's a world in which they go receiver here as well.
Absolutely.
But I think they're going to go O-line. And I know you like Olu, so I'm going to leave him for you a little bit later because I think Joe Alt is going to be the pick here. I think Joe Alt, to solidify that other side of Rashawn Slater, for Justin Herbert, your generational quarterback, a guy that just signed an extension, a guy that's dealt with injury history. Keep him upright. Jim Harbaugh's going to go offensive lineman here, and I think Joe Alt's the best tackle in the draft.
Do you think, though, with that being the case, that there's a conversation about Alt playing left side, right side, that's a complication? I know a lot of these guys try to come in as left tackle specifically because they know the pay difference from a right tackle to a left tackle. At the end of the day, they don't really have that choice. If you get drafted and you're asked to play tackle and you put it on the right side, you put it on the right side.
Yep.
And I do think that they need to address the offensive line. I think it would be easier in my scenario, in my mock draft, I had Fashanu going as the first tackle on the board. I think because he's a younger prospect, as a little bit more to get crafted in the future, that's why I feel like that was the direction that made a lot more sense. He's younger. He's a bigger prospect, so I feel like those were some identities that helped me align him going first. I think it's harder to move Alt to the right side rather than Fashanu. I think that this is the direction that they have to go in, though, knowing your franchise got banged up last year. Regardless of who his pass catchers are, Josh Palmer still isn't bad. You can still get some veteran receivers that can catch the ball. In the 3rd round, there's still good receivers available.
Good receivers, and we bash Quentin Johnson because he had a terrible season and he was way overtaken. But at the end of the day, with Jim Harbaugh there, with Justin Herbert, there's always a chance he finds his way into a spot in the league here. I'm not going to completely count him out yet, even though he played like shit last year, was dropping balls, way overhyped. But there's a world where he's in a situation where he can be successful still. You can't count him out fully with Jim Harbaugh, with Justin Herbert, and then eventually with a good O-line.
No, I couldn't agree anymore. And this gets me to the New York Giants here at 6.
And I'm sure you're psyched.
I'm not psyched right now, honestly. I love Jayden Daniels. That's the quarterback that I viewed as my top guy going into the process. I want the process to work out where we don't draft a quarterback right now.
Mm-hmm.
If we have a $40 million quarterback sitting on our bench this year, that's more catastrophic than drafting a guy, regardless of how it works out. I think you have to at least say that you tried to put him in a scenario to be successful. And I don't think that Daniel Jones was provided in any of those scenarios. And whether you go quarterback here or you go wide receiver, that's a position that hasn't been successful since Odell Beckham was around with the New York Giants. So I think whether it's the future quarterback, whether it's Daniel Jones, they both need a number 1 guy to throw the ball to. I think that Andrew Thomas was banged up last year. I think we got some offensive line help. John Michael Schmidt was a top pick last year for us. So I do think the offensive line's getting better. We made an investment on the defensive side of the ball, so I don't think going defense is the direction we need to go. At this pick right here, it comes down to Odunze and Jayden Daniels. Knowing that Neighbors and MHJ are both gone, and a quarterback is in your conversation without having to move up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that position was strongly considered, was strongly scouted throughout this entire process. I do think that the Giants are not trying to be predictable. So, they're just trying to do their due diligence at the same time. I don't see Odunze being selected in the top 6. Not saying that he's not worthy of it, because I think he's a tremendous talent. I just think that the way the conversation's going, that the being no trades in our mock draft is impacting the way that this falls out.
110%.
Yeah. So, with that being the case, Jayden Daniels is off the board. The Giants have the option. Okay, does this dude is he going to start the year depending on how his camp is? Is Daniel Jones even going to be healthy to be able to participate week 1 and play the season like that? All questions that'll go on. If Daniel Jones was to start the season and you have Jayden Daniels on your bench, it's just going to be like, oh, when are we going to see the kid? When are we going to see the kid? And that's why I'm not, in the New York market in the scenario to want to draft. Because I don't want to hear that after just hearing all the Tommy DeVito conversation last year.
Brutal.
There's just so much shit that's been going on with the quarterback, but it's tough to pass up the value here in Daniels, knowing that there realistically could be quarterback selected with the first 4 picks. And we get the guy I was most in love with at that position. So I'm pretty happy about that. But like I said, this can very much be Odunze. And it's tough to see him, fall where it'll likely be to 9 for Odunze, because I don't see Atlanta or Tennessee going in that direction.
I 100% agree. And then you look at Jayden Daniels, and he's in a situation where when you're talking about the Giants, I think they're kind of fortunate with a pick they are very fortunate with a pick like Jayden Daniels, and especially knowing, I believe this is the last guaranteed year of Daniel Jones' contract, where it's up to the Giants and Daniel Jones if they want to keep extending. And that helps out a lot, because now you're at the end of this year, you're not handcuffed. You had a guy that you say, we have our new guy, or fuck, we got to kind of figure it out and just go in completely different directions. We have Jayden, we need to draft another quarterback. You can figure things out at the end of this year. Regardless, the Giants are going to probably struggle this year. And that is how it is, but I think at the end of the season, they're in a spot where they're going to know where they are finally.
Yeah.
And they're not handcuffed by a Daniel Jones contract. I love the Jayden Daniels pick there. Steve, Tennessee.
I want to just add something in, though. The part of the reason why I feel that way, though, is because I still feel confident in, the next couple years of quarterback classes that I still feel like are going to be good, and I'm not opposed to drafting a quarterback. I just don't think it has to be our first pick. I'm cool with getting, a Rattler or a Jordan Travis or some of those guys a little bit later on in the draft, knowing that we have an opportunity to I don't want to say hit, but not reach on a quarterback and still have an opportunity to at least find a backup, because we don't have that either.
Seriously. You're right. You're 100% right.
So that and you have Sanders, you have Ewers still in the draft conversation for next year. Arch Manning is a name that, even though he hasn't had college play, could realistically just be a first-round draft pick without even starting a game for Texas, in that scenario. So,
and there are going to be guys that shine next year in college, and we're going to say, that's another dude.
Yes.
That's another dude.
So I'm not so concerned that it needs to be this year. I'd rather fill, like you said with the Patriots, fill out the rest of the voids, so that this way, if somebody does come in or there's a proper scenario to make that attempt to reach, we can do that and there not be excuses around.
Yep.
That wasn't the case with Daniel Jones.
It wasn't. 100% wasn't. Steve, we're going to Tennessee here. This is a defensive side of the ball pick.
Okay.
I think with the talent on defense in this draft, and with how offense just completely went 1 through 6, and I think that's really how I think it's going to be offense to start. But when it gets to Tennessee, you sign Calvin Ridley, you sign Tony Pollard, you have Tajay Spears, you have DeAndre Hopkins, you got your quarterback last year, you got Skoronski last year. You could go offensive line here, but that defense has seriously struggled. And prior to making a move, I would have said they were going to go cornerback here, but with signing L'Jarius Sneed, I think you get yourself a premier edge rusher, and we've been talking about the best edge rusher in the draft, Steve. Write him in. It's Dallas Turner. Dallas Turner is the pick to make here. If you get a guy that can get after the quarterback like Dallas Turner, that opens up play for Jeffrey Simmons, that makes it so L'Jarius Sneed can play the receiver more than having to focus on the ball. It really sets up that defense to actually have pieces that they can seriously build around and be impactful this year. Tennessee's defense last year was god-awful.
Horrible.
The secondary was really bad. But you signed
that
L'Jarius
division
Sneed.
got a lot better, too.
You could get, 100%. You could get a guy to match up on the other side of L'Jarius Sneed, but I think you got to address the D-line. You have Jeffrey Simmons. Let's get a real good pass rusher, though, on the edge.
Yeah.
Dallas Turner's the pick here.
I like the Dallas Turner fit. I do think that they have huge holes at the offensive line. Even though Skoronski was drafted last year, was viewed as one of the better tackles, he plays left guard for them. That's going to be his position. So I feel like at least either side of the line, you can lock up one of those tackle positions, knowing that you do have a young quarterback. It could be something that they go later with a guy like Guyton or Mims that are still pretty good tackles. I do just think you can have your pick of the litter here, knowing that Alt's the only one to go. Fasciano could be a pick. I agree with you, though. There needs to be a defensive player selected in this top, and it's just tough even going to like the back end, knowing that any team from 9 to 14 is in a trade scenario, depending on what the value is there. So I like the Dallas Turner pick. I think he is likely going to be one of the first defenders off the board, one of the better pass rushers, too. You got Byron Murphy up there. I know No.2's been climbing up some boards coming out of UCLA. We'll talk about all those guys likely within the next 5 to 10 picks. This gives me Atlanta at 8. Completely different direction. Not a team that I feel like is screaming offensive line heavy. In this scenario, knowing that there's a quarterback on the board, this can likely be a team moving up from like 12, where Denver to move up 3 picks might not cost them as much as it would have cost to get up to 4 with Arizona. Yep. So Atlanta's going to make a pick. They're going to take the first cornerback off the board. This is going to be Quinyon Mitchell coming off the board. I think there's a strong conversation any single time that there's a good Alabama. Anytime there's a good Alabama defender there, you obviously have like that right to Atlanta type of fit that could work out. I feel like that was a big conversation around like Bryce Young and some of like the top wide receivers of years past. But Quinyon Mitchell here, like what I was trying to insinuate was the Terrion Arnold conversation. But a lot of people like the speed, the twitchiness from Quinyon Mitchell. I think the only downfall in his scenario is that, coming from Toledo, you don't play against, the top tier experience of collegiate teams in trailing around, the dominant X wide receivers or anything like that. But he tested well. He's really quick. Gives you an opportunity to pair him with A.J. Terrell, who we already have seen has made a crazy impact. Jesse Bates on that back end. This could be a scenario where they go, with a top pass rusher. Could be, a Byron Murphy here.
I'd argue they could go receiver too.
They could. I just feel like how much are you going to invest in that offense until you can say it's not enough? And if you draft a receiver there, what is Kyle Pitts' role? Because I also could have went in like the Brock Bowers scenario. Yep. Like that could have been a freaking sick pick for them. But I just feel like if you do that, then it's already kind of like writing off Pitts. And I feel like part of the reason why Cousins fits in so well there is to be the distributor for all those guys,
right.
But I think Quinyon Mitchell is a really good fit here and allows them to share up a part of their team that hasn't been consistent for a long time. Quinyon Mitchell to Atlanta.
Steve, love the pick. And the other thing with Quinyon Mitchell is being on the other side from A.J. Terrell, being with Raheem Morris, who's more of a defensive-minded coach, that could seriously help his development and really start to almost throw away the conversations of, hey, he hasn't faced the top-level competition. Well, guess what? He's being trained like he has to. He's going to go – we're not putting A.J. Terrell against Drake London. We know what he can do. Go ahead. Let's see what you can do, Quinyon Mitchell.
Exactly. So, it's different expectations, too, because, like I said, like Terrell will still likely follow around the top guys. So if you're saying instead of being put on an island with the top dudes right away, you get to either play your scheme specifically or just – take around like the other guy. Like I feel like that's a beneficial to get experience right away.
Steve, I think with this next pick for Chicago, they could move here as well to build more depth. But here at 9, staying at 9, you just got your quarterback. I think you keep him. Now, I know you got Darnell Wright already last year, but I think you got to focus on keeping him upright. I think the defensive side of the ball for Chicago has gotten tremendously better since Montez Sweat moved over there. You have Jalen Johnson. You have Jaquan Brisker. You have a lot of these guys. The one that I'm going to throw in there, I think he's going O-line here. I think this is where Olu's going, and I'm fucking the Jets at it. So this is perfect. This is absolutely perfect. Olu Fashuan here. I think he's the number 2 tackle. I know he's your number 1. You could flip. It's either way. I think Fashuan is a really good person to have on the other side of Darnell Wright. Solidify that offensive line. Keep the guy that you've invested in upright. You already have 2 stud receivers for him. 2 in my top 10. Probably in your top 13. 2 would be in your top 13. But you got DJ Moore, you got Keenan Allen. I don't necessarily think you need receiver. You could add a third, but I don't think you need it.
No, because I feel like you want to make sure that those guys get fed too.
Yep.
And I do think that when it comes draft night, it's I don't want to say it's a tough scenario, but because Odunze is still like a top 5 player like in this draft. Like I think when you get to 10, it's going to be really tough to say like, oh, how is he still not going to go off the board, regardless of what the team's needs are for anybody. But I think that this is another good move. You protect your franchise that at least you believe. You have 3 first-round picks on that offensive line. You got Jenkins, you got Wright, you got Fashanu now. So I feel like you're doing everything you can to have a successful ground game, successful run game, keeping your quarterback upright. Defense talent would really be a question here, but I also feel like with the Montez Sweat addition, now is using some draft picks to invest in the defensive side of the ball. 10, this makes me at a really tough conversation because I also feel like this is a team that could look to trade back in this scenario knowing how much more well-rounded they want to be. But the tough part about this conversation is, yes, offensive line's a huge hole. They trade for Morgan Moses, and you bring in Tyron Smith, who's a veteran. You still have Mekhi Becton there and Elijah Vera Tucker. So I just feel like between those guys, someone's gonna play and has to be good enough. Like
seriously.
I just think like that has to be the case. Knowing how much pressure is on them to win, I feel like why not get Aaron Rodgers another weapon? And God forbid something happened to Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall, one of these guys can still step up and have a great role or value. Really tough to say that Odunze would pass in this scenario, but just thinking with the Jets specifically, like the past 4 years, their best tight end was Tyler Conklin. Like I really do think that depending on how you view Brock Bowers as a prospect, you might view that he's a better pass catcher than Odunze. I don't think that that's the case, and I don't feel like that Odunze and Garrett Wilson are the same type of skill set. I think if you pair those two up, that's a pretty successful scenario, knowing that Odunze can be your jump ball, go and get a guy. Garrett Wilson can be your possession guy. But I also want to consider, too, like, does Rodgers want to have, like, Allen Lazard, like, have a role there? You know what I mean? Does he have faith that a guy like Randall Cobb is still going to be around and, like, be impactful? So those are all questions. With that being the case, I'm going to take Brock Bowers over Odunze in this scenario.
He does fit so well because he gives them the great thing about Brock Bowers, Steve, is we talk about, well, the Jets do need to block better. They also need better pass catchers. You knock out 2 birds with one stone with Brock Bowers.
Yeah,
there.
And I feel like it allows him to elevate a different level of the field too, because I do think that they like some of like their young playmakers that they have that we saw glimpses on last year, but you know the quarterback scenario just didn't really allow them to get the ball like that. I still just think like your offense is being ran through Garrett and Breece regardless. I just think this gives them the opportunity to distribute more, where I feel like Odunze could have likely been in a scenario, I don't want to say to disappoint, but not live up to like, yo, this dude can be like one of those 1,300-yard wide receivers right away. Where Wilson and Breece Hall likely getting, you know, above 1,400 scrimmage yards each. I just don't know how much more would go around for another wide receiver position. I think Bowers can still get his and be a more like reception type of receiver, similar to a Kincaid than a yard and touchdown type of guy.
And I think he helps Breece Hall tremendously, specifically in the red zone. I think that Garrett Wilson's good in the red zone, but I think Brock Bowers can be a serious touchdown threat where you know that when they're in the red zone, my opinion, the go-to for the Jets should be Breece Hall.
Yeah.
You add Brock Bowers in there, you have another piece, and I get it. Garrett Wilson's great. He can go up and get it one-on-one. You throw him the ball, he's going to come down with it. But you add another piece to that in Brock Bowers, and they're going to be unstoppable in the red zone, Steve.
Absolutely. Minnesota at 11.
You made it nice and easy for me here at 11, Steve. It's J.J. McCarthy, man. If J.J. McCarthy's here at 11, while I don't think he's the most talented prospect at quarterback, while I think he has rocketed up draft boards too quickly, Minnesota needs a quarterback so desperately, and if they can stay put at 11 and get J.J. McCarthy, Kevin O'Connell's the right kind of coach to develop a quarterback the style of J.J. McCarthy. And it also shows them, listen, JJ, we're trying to get you somebody that can get you the ball. If you don't, we're going to try Sam Darnold, but we have JJ McCarthy too. So stick around. Don't worry. We're going to take care of you. But JJ McCarthy, we think is going to be this guy. Stick with us for a second because we're going to get him there. And Kevin O'Connell's got to do it.
On my rankings out of 35 players, I have JJ McCarthy ranked at 20th. How does that feel? How does that make you feel?
I think it's pretty good. I do think it's pretty good. Again, when it comes to the quarterback position, there are a couple teams that so desperately need it. I don't think teams are jumping into the top 10 to get McCarthy. I don't think they should. They might, but I don't know that I would spend so much to jump in and get J.J. McCarthy, especially when you have a guy in Sam Darnold that I would argue does the same fucking thing as J.J. McCarthy. I think Darnold's has a little bit more movement, and J.J. McCarthy is a little more...
You think Darnold has more movement than McCarthy?
I think Darnold can move.
Okay.
I think Darnold can move. I think J.J. McCarthy's a little bit cleaner between the ears.
Oh, I would have thought vice versa for those two dudes.
I disagree. I think Sam Darnold's had so much shit happen to him in his career.
I think he's traumatized.
The whole ghost thing. I just think people doubt him so much, and people are gonna doubt J.J. McCarthy, but J.J. McCarthy's gonna be like, dude, you haven't seen me fucking play it. You got nothing to base that off of. Yeah. Whereas Darnold's gonna be like, yeah, I fucking sucked with the Jets. Yeah, like I got beat out by Brock Purdy on the Niners.
I wouldn't say beat out. I don't think it was his scenario to really win over. I think it was more of a Geno Smith scenario where it's like, hey, come and sit and be our backup and get this experience. Kind of like what happened for Mitch Trubisky and how that 1 year of experience sitting just kind of elevated his game and allowed him to get a 2-year deal with Pittsburgh. We know that didn't work out regardless, but I feel like that's kind of a trend for, and maybe something that might happen with Daniel Jones too. You know.
And then you get the whole USC thing, though. So it's everyone's going to make fun of a USC quarterback.
Regardless.
Whether they paint their nails or they bust in the league.
At 12, this gives me the Denver Broncos. I don't think that this one would be a typically long draft pick, wait for this to happen.
Yep.
The fact that Odunze fell here, I feel like this has to be a fit.
Yep.
I know that there's questions everywhere else. I know that they still need offensive line, and there's plenty of good ones still available. Odunze has no business being at 13. I think if there's trades in this draft, you're talking about more quarterbacks going higher and Odunze going higher realistically. But I think the way it works out, it's just 3 quarterbacks in the top, 3 wide receivers in the top 12 is still a pretty good amount. I know we're seeing the less impact on the defensive side, especially in the draft, but Denver's in a scenario where they just need to get better wherever, and this is the best player available and just happens to be a position in need. I have 1 player left in my top 10. Byron Murphy's the last player left in my top 10. He'll likely go within the next 5 picks.
I would 100% agree, but guess what? He's not going to Vegas here at 13, Steve.
Okay.
I think Vegas at this position, no McCarthy available. I think they're going to go best player available, and I don't think it's going to be on the defensive front because I think they have their pieces. They have Wilkins, they have Crosby, they drafted Tyree Wilson. I think they're going to go look in the secondary. Now, I do like Jack Jones in Vegas. While he may end up in jail at some point over there because he brings guns into airports and thinks it's okay, I think corner's okay for them.
Yeah.
But I think you get a guy in Cooper DeJean right here.
Oh, wow.
Where he can be very, very flexible. You can play him at the safety. You need him to play corner for a down. I think he's so versatile. And again, I like your argument of, hey, maybe that doesn't mean he can lock down such a position. But in Vegas, where you have some good corners already, you have a good corner in Jack Jones. Even though I'm a New England fan, I like to be salty sometimes. He's got to fit in Vegas. He's made his impact.
You have DeJean going over Arnold. Do you think that's the case?
I don't think they're looking for necessarily a specific cornerback. I think they're looking for somebody to help anchor that room, and it could end up being the ability to move Cooper to play cover corner and be able to go play zone at safety and then come up and hit the quarterback. I think he's a really good fit in Vegas for being able to kind of round out that room wherever they want to put him.
Okay. So after hearing our argument, wasn't enough to skew your thought, though?
No, I think DeJean's just a better fit. Because I think Vegas has the chance with DeJean to say, this is where we want to put him.
Yeah.
Whereas with Arnold, it's he's playing corner and he's locking down. If Vegas wants to say corner's not working out great, we're gonna put him at safety and he's gonna be the best safety in the league. They have the ability to do that, and they have such a good defensive-minded coach in Antonio Pierce that I think it's a perfect fit for him. And I think he has a very unique ability to take so much in and be able to apply it to the game, even in real time.
Okay. 14. This gives me the New Orleans Saints. And
abomination of a team.
I really can go in a lot of different directions because they need help at a bunch of different places, but I just feel like the offensive line makes the most sense here, knowing the injuries that's going down with Ryan Ramczyk, who like they're locked up as a large part of their salary implications and things like that. And I just feel like, how are you going to expect a young quarterback in the next couple of years, or Derek Carr right now, to have any success there? How are you going to expect Kamara to run through holes or Olave to be a productive wide receiver if you can't stay upright? And Byron Murphy screams great fit here, but I honestly just can't see them starting a year without Ryan Ramczyk because of a knee surgery and not having anything to fill that in. So I'm going to give them Talise Fuaga, who I feel like can play either side of that line. If they feel comfortable with their tackle positions, could be a guy that can be a huge guard with some mobility. I feel like this is a really good fit for them. Not a flashy pick, knowing how many other players they really could have picked here and addressed different holes. I just feel like this is a fit that makes the most sense for the Saints and should help to solve a lot of their problems.
So you like him better than Latham?
It was real tough for me to select between the two. I think Latham can come in and be more of a left side guy. Yep. I don't know that the Saints are necessarily looking for that. I think that they have enough holes around the offensive line where Fuaga might be able to fill a couple of different holes depending on how everything else falls out. Yeah. I think Latham is a more of like a set in stone, like left tackle, like I'm going to be your guy here. But I think that there's still like some conversation around that because like I think Guyton's a really big dude. Yeah. I think Fatanu's like another guy that has more of like the versatile approach. Latham is climbing up the board. I think he's selected before top 20. But like I said, in this scenario where I'm not sure that he's needed on the left side, I think Fuaga gives a lot of versatility here.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Agree with that breakdown as well. Steve, we're going to Indy here. Realistically, the guy that I'm going to pick for him, I don't think falls to 15.
Okay.
But he's on the board. And they desperately need this. And Lou's going to be very happy because Lou gets what he wants. He's getting Terry and Arnold at 15.
Yes.
They desperately need a lockdown corner. Lou, go check out the first mock draft. Lou was talking about it. I think you guys ended up going with Jayden. Or did you go with...
We went with Terry and Arnold.
Oh, you got Terry and Arnold?
Yeah,
okay, so I mean, this fits perfect. Now, I don't know that he falls to 15. Oh, this is...
Yeah, right in front of us.
No, you want Wiggins.
No, Nate Wiggins.
Wiggins.
So Terry and Arnold's got selected 13.
13 to Vegas, so that's what it was.
So Terry and Arnold, in my first mock, Terry and Arnold went 13 to Vegas, and then Nate Wiggins with Lou coming back on receipts. Indy. Oh no, where are we?
You're looking for Cooper?
Indy did get Terry on Arnold. Yep. Cooper DeJean went 19 to the Rams.
Yep.
On Lou's pick.
Very interesting because that's a good spot for him as well. But I'm going Terry on Arnold. I think he's the best corner in the draft, pure corner. I think he's the best in the draft. They desperately need a lockdown guy. If he gets to 15, I think he's the best player on the board. Period.
So you think he's a better corner than Quinion Mitchell?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Right now, I do.
Okay.
Right now, coming out of college, I think I do.
The experience matters regardless of the test scores and the speed.
Yes, I think so. I think just the ability to line up on some of these other super talented guys is going to give him a little bit of an edge. And he's played in the big games. He's played in front of the big crowds. I think he just has more experience playing in front of these massive stadiums, massive crowds. He knows what the implications are if he fails, and he's ready to excel. I think Terry and Arnold.
The wait is no longer. Byron Murphy goes here to Seattle at 16. And once again, the Seahawks somehow just get great players falling to them in the draft. This gives you a defensive line made up of Leonard Williams, Draymond Jones, and Byron Murphy. Fucking yikes, dude. I want nothing to do with that whatsoever. I think Seattle has a very, very, very strong chance of winning that division.
Yep.
I think the competition in the quarterback room between Smith and Howell is going to be a good thing. My biggest question comes in with McDonald coming in being the head coach. Like, I like the defensive positioning. Like, I understand that approach. It makes sense. They have a very diverse offense with the ground game and the pass game. I think the offensive line could add some pieces later, but adding, guys the past couple years in big tackles that they have, I feel like this gives them the opportunity to continue to address best available. Getting rid of Brooks and Bobby Wagner in the same offseason is going to be catastrophic, but I think getting a dude like this, falling to 16, is a great selection for you guys, and you have 3 dudes that can realistically get 10-plus sacks in a year.
Which is insane. That's going to be a scary, scary presence, and they're in a competitive division, and they're going to fight for it.
Yeah.
I also think Arizona's going to shock a little bit of people this year. I think they're going to have a little bit more of an impressive season.
They are.
We're going to get to that, though. We'll get to that down the road in a couple later episodes.
Schedule predictions, yes.
Steve, at 17, Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville has talent at a lot of different positions. They just can't seem to get it done, though. So they can go in a lot of different directions here. I'm inclined to think that the offensive side of the ball is okay. But when you lose Ridley, I think while you have Zay Jones is good, while you have Christian Kirk's there is good, you have a couple other receivers. Steve, I actually don't know who I want to go. You know what? I do know who I want to go with. And I think this is the next best receiver.
Brian Thomas.
Okay. I think
I don't
Brian
hate the
Thomas
pick.
is a really good pick there. I almost feel he's very similar to Calvin Ridley, where he can kind of go right into that offense, and he plays a similar role. And I think just when you have the opportunity to get that in the first round, you give Trevor a weapon, now you know. It's like, Trevor, do it, or we're going to have to start really considering if you're going to be worth 45, 50 million.
I actually think that's part of the reason why Mac Jones got traded there. Not because that they have doubts about Trevor being their guy, but it's just like, hey, like we want to add a little bit more competition here. This was a guy that was a first-round pick that I feel like could add that. But in Mac's perspective, he's not expected to be the starter. That's Lawrence's until he loses it. But yeah, I don't think he's in that $45 million conversation right now. Like, I know Daniel Jones got that, but I also feel like Trevor Lawrence is a little bit more comparable to the Baker Mayfield contract than he is for, like, that Daniel Jones. That was just a dumbass move by the New York Giants, but, like, that's what we do. So I think that this is a good direction for them. Also curious in your thoughts, like with Nate Wiggins being available here, knowing that Darius Williams is no longer a part of like their organization, and like that could be a direction they go. I also feel like they have a solid offensive line, but adding a Latham here, like that could
awesome.
Yeah, like I feel like that direction or those directions could be a little bit more direct. I think Thomas is more for like the flashy play. I just don't know, like if you had Calvin Ridley there and he didn't cater to that flashy role, why is a rookie going to come in and do that?
But you also look at the injury history, and like Kirk has gotten hurt sometimes. Zay Jones gets hurt like a couple games every year. You have a guy in Brian Thomas that's probably going to become your one. Like Kirk's there right now.
Yeah.
There's a world in which Brian Thomas can become your one.
Yeah.
Jacksonville is one of those teams that can't miss here. They're going to go anybody at this. It all depends on where they think they are. They can't miss, though. Like you said, they have Latham, they have Wiggins, they have Brian Thomas. If they don't want to go Brian Thomas, or they want to go another receiver, you have a Donnie Mitchell, or you have like a Burner and Xavier Worthy, which I think would go way too early here.
Yeah, I think so too.
I just, you have a scenario in which you cannot lose here. You got to make a good decision. The right decision can come however you want. It all depends on where they view themselves.
Yeah.
I think that they can add another piece to the offense and just be that explosive.
18 with Cincinnati. I feel like they've addressed offensive line consistently through free agency just because they know what ended up happening. You know, you ended up losing your franchise quarterback for the year. Jamar Chase got a little bit banged up through the year, so they wanted to address that. This kind of gives them the opportunity to invest in the defensive side of the ball. My two directions are defensive back or pass rusher immediately, and I feel like there's still two guys that are very much available here. I'm going to go a different direction. I haven't really had this dude go that high. In my personal mock, I had him go 16. This could very much be a Nate Wiggins or a Jared Verse pick, but I'm going to go Latu here, coming out of UCLA. I feel like he has like the best mold to be more of like the outside linebacker type of dude, and I just feel like Hendrickson's a dog on that defensive line, and Hubbard's a really good player, and like I know that they have some good interior play. They did just lose DJ Reader, though. I feel like this dude Latu is really going to give them that pass rush respect, even though defensive back is a direction that they could go and would make so much more sense because I feel like they have needs at the cornerback position. But I think that this dude might have more of that mold that they're looking for in that direction. If you can get sacks and that gets Joe Burrow on the field a little bit more, I feel like that's what you're looking for. Also, in my personal mock, I had Brian Thomas going here, and that's what, the thought of potentially moving on from T. Higgins, which I still feel like can happen before the draft.
Yeah. Steve, next pick, first of all, love that pick for them. I think Cincinnati really does need to address the defensive side of the ball. I think they got the best quarterback, one of the best quarterbacks. You got one of the best receivers. You got one of the best twos if he ends up sticking around there. I mean, I just think that they're in a position where they got to address defense. Complete opposite for this next team, though. Realistically, Carolina here at 19.
Rams.
I'm sorry, Rams, LA. Okay, so good. Things change. I was like, when the fuck did
no
Carolina
pick.
get back in the first round?
Yeah, no pick. Sorry
So,
about that.
Where I'm going to go for the LA Rams, I like their offensive side of the ball a lot. I do think that there's a world in which they can address O-line here, but I don't think it's where they're going to go. I think they lost such a significant portion in Aaron Donald on the defensive end, or the defensive side of the ball. But I don't even know that they go interior, Steve. I think with Nate Wiggins on the board here, they get a lockdown corner. They get a lockdown corner in Nate Wiggins. I think he's the best defensive player on the board at this point in time. You could argue Jared Verse, but I'm going to go Nate Wiggins here. Lockdown corner. Really fills a nice role for that team and really helps build out that secondary.
No, I like the pick, and honestly, like I would have went in that same direction. I know that there is offensive line here, and there is still some pass rushes. I know that they have some young prospects that they really like too, and they want to give them, that opportunity to kind of groom and mold into that role. With the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is another tough offensive line type of conversation because they did address it last year, and we saw how that role kind of played out. Mm-hmm. So even though Latham could be one of the guys that could go here, if he's not going to play the right side, I think Fatanu's a good fit here. So I'm going to go Troy Fatanu. I just feel like the direction that they went in the offseason, we're adding Arthur Smith, bringing in the quarterback and the addition that you do, you want to make sure that they're not in any scenario to get sacked or anything to impact, their growth or their development there. You get 2 tackles that are young that are going to be part of your franchise for quite some time. I had Fatanu here at 16, 17 on my board. So this gets him off the market at a couple picks later, so I still feel like it's a good value. Latham and Guyton are both guys that can be in the conversation here for Pittsburgh, but I do really think that this is a guy that I think that this is the direction that Pittsburgh goes in his offensive line.
It's a good spot. You had Broderick Jones last year. You rounded out with Fatanu this year. This is great. This leaves me with Miami. Me and the AFC East, man. I'm trying to give them nothing. Trade out for nothing.
Yeah, right.
But at Miami, I think the biggest spot they need to – they lost Christian Wilkins, man. I think that's going to be a significant portion on their defense. They lost Van Ginkel as well.
Yep.
You got to address this area of the ball. Steve, I think the guy to go with at a Florida State University is Jared Verse.
Keep him right in
edge rusher,
Florida.
Keep him right there in Florida. Like, it fits really, really well.
I like it.
Is a good backfill for Wilkins, Van Ginkel. He's a guy on the edge. You work him with Jalen Phillips.
Bradley Chubb.
This defense starts to become scary again.
Yeah, I think that they need to have a room like that you can have like a bunch of different pass rushes. Giving Ramsey, a little bit extra time in that back end is only going to help out. I know you love Holland there. So for them to stay consistent, I feel like this is the direction that they can go. I feel like it might be a little too early for them to go interior offensive line.
I think so as well. Because what are you thinking, Jackson Powers or something?
Jackson
like
Powers. I also know that Graham Barton is a guy that's a tackle, listed as a tackle, but could play a little bit more of that inside. So those are all interesting directions here for Miami. But at 22 with Philly, I have their biggest needs being defensive back and linebacker, but not sure that we could really, address this here. If you want to talk about, the Kool-Aid McKinstry conversation, I'm here for it. I do know that, they drafted Kelly Ringo last year.
Yep.
They have some young guys on the defensive front. Interested to do you think if this is too early that you can get a guy like Tyler Nubin at that safety position that can add in?
They need safety really, really bad, and this is someone where if Cooper DeJean finds his way down there, they lock him up immediately, but I don't think it's too early to go safety for them. I think that you got to address that secondary somehow because they gave up the most yards last year. They were just completely exposable. And Bradbury's not getting any younger. Slay's still playing at an elite level, but they're getting exposed in the secondary. You could backfill Kelsey, but no one's going to fucking backfill Kelsey. So I just say you wait anyway.
Yeah, and look, I think that they can very much go right tackle to eventually replace Lane Johnson. But I also feel like this is a team that's kind of in win now mode. Knowing what they have. They got Saquon Barkley. You got Hurts, you got AJ Brown, you got Smith. You got a left tackle, you got a right tackle. Landon Dickerson just got paid on the inside. I know. Losing Jason Kelsey is going to be huge, but there has to be some sort of, advantage from having him there. So I think, Nubin is the direction here, and I know this could be a little bit early for a safety, but I think he has really good ball skills and makes this a really well-rounded team. And plus, like, I just can't see them going in a wide receiver direction at 22nd overall.
Seriously, especially with the guys that are left. You can look at a Donnie Mitchell later. You can look at Lad McConkey later. Like, there are other guys that you can look at later. If you want a speed guy, you look at X in round 2 or 3. Like,
for sure.
You can look at these guys later, especially with how deep the receivers are. Troy Franklin, same thing.
Yeah.
A lot of different receivers you can go later in the draft here. I like the Newman pick.
Absolutely. Minnesota with 23.
Minnesota just drafted J.J. McCarthy at 11, and I think that they on offense are a pretty damn good team. I think they're very weak defensively, and I think they're going to need a corner damn bad.
Okay.
I can also see them go edge rusher here with Danielle Hunter going, but I think they got to lock somebody down, and I think the next best corner is Kool-Aid.
Kool-Aid McKinstry.
I think Kool-Aid McKinstry fits in pretty well here. And is Brian Flores still coaching that defense up?
Is.
So I think that he's going to have a really, really good impact on Kool-Aid McKinstry there. Keep him clean between the ears and really help him develop into a lockdown corner. Do think Terry and Arnold's better, but I think Kool-Aid has a really good opportunity to flourish here in Minnesota. In a team that's defense, I feel like is going to get thrown on a lot.
Okay. Dallas is a very interesting pick here at 24. I feel like they have a lot of different holes and opportunities they can go. I do feel like they have a draft identity. Like, I feel like this is a team that likes to draft pass rushers, defensive line, and linebackers. But when their offensive line needs work, they also address that right away, and I feel like that's what they're gonna do.
Yep.
Guyton here, yeah, I'm gonna have them going Tyler Guyton over Latham in this scenario. I think that they have Tyler Smith that I feel like they like on the left side. They're going to obviously not give Guyton the choice. He's going to be on the right side of the ball. Lining up next to Zach Martin, I think, will help. Oklahoma's not too far, but still a prestigious college organization. This is a really big dude, Tyler Guyton here for Dallas.
I love that, Steve, because that puts the Packers in a good spot, and I'm going hot take here. David Bakhtiari gets moved on draft night, and if J.C. Latham's on the board. Oh, he's cut.
Yeah.
I mean, this is J.C. Latham.
Okay.
This is J.C. If J.C. Latham's here at 25, not only do I think he's the best player on the board, he fits that left tackle mold for Jordan Love, and he'll be there forever for him.
Yeah.
Fits a really, really good mold. Jordan Love is a taller quarterback. He can get the ball over J.C. Latham, no problem. And it's a left side guy that he's ready to go right into the left side. I think it's a perfect fit if he's here at 25. It's a miss if you don't take him.
Yeah, and they need to make sure that they can keep Jordan Love like on his feet with the way like that offense is going to be like moving in like that direction with abundance of wide receivers running the ball with Josh Jacobs. Definitely a position that I could see them addressing multiple times throughout to make sure that their franchise quarterback stays upright. 26 here, we have Tampa Bay. I can't see Todd Bowles not going on the defensive side of the ball here.
Correct.
Just with his defensive mindset and approach and locking up Baker Mayfield and Mike Evans in the offseason. I feel like you have to, compensate a little bit. So, going to go a little bit outside my top 30. I'm going to go with Enos Rakestraw coming out of Mizzou.
He's good,
cornerback. Dude. Yeah, I honestly like his skills. Obviously, not being able to play against someone like that top competition coming out of Mizzou, I feel like holds him back a little bit. But really fast, really twitchy type of cover corner, and I feel like that's a position that is kind of a need for them too. Rakestraw here for Tampa Bay.
Love it. Now we got Arizona here at 27. Now they had just addressed the wide receiver in Malik Neighbors. Now this may be one of those picks that's involved in the trade, or they stay here and they load it up on the pick from 4. But Arizona
went wide receiver.
They already went wide receiver. I don't hate them addressing the offensive side of the ball again here, but I'm not going to do that for them. I don't know that if they got someone like Malik Neighbors, where they're like, okay, let's see how the offense does with who could be a generational wide receiver, much like Marvin Harrison. I could see them going defensive side of the ball, knowing the defense has been lacking a lot recently. They lost Isaiah Simmons last year, but they got Buddha. I don't know that they go specifically to the secondary, Steve.
Okay.
I think they're going to be looking at an edge rusher. I think a good fit would be Chop Robinson.
Okay.
I think Chop Robinson can really help round out getting after the quarterback. Good player out of Penn State. Had the privilege to watch him play as well. I just really, really think that he's a talented guy, and if he's here, Arizona wants to address someone that can get after the passer. I think Chop Robinson's a really good pick here.
No, he definitely is. I know Jerzon Newton is still a guy like still on the board, and he was rated like a little bit higher. In my personal mock, I had Arizona going in that direction as a guy that could be, might not be as athletic, but just like with the size and the success he had at the collegiate level, if you can get one of the top wide receivers and still top defenders, that's a good draft for them, knowing that they have another pick there at 35.
Yep.
I think that this is a good direction and definitely a position that I feel like they need to address. In every single mock that I've done where I had Buffalo, I have them getting a Donnie Mitchell. Like, I just can't see them passing up on the wide receiver there. Like, I think it's a need. I think that they have other positions that they could address, like offensive line or some defensive positions, but I just don't think you can go out there with Curtis Samuel, Shakir, and Kincaid next year and say they're like, hey, like, we're a contender.
Yep.
Like, I don't. And I think that there are still other plays that they could have. Like, T. Higgins could be a guy that they could be keeping a tab on. But if you can get T. Higgins and draft a guy like a Donnie Mitchell, just think of how much better you could be set up. So I'm going to go with Donnie Mitchell here for Buffalo.
Love that. I think it's a perfect fit. He just seems like the type of receiver that fits in Buffalo the way he's molded. I've got Detroit. It's only fitting that I hit Detroit here. Detroit played really well against the run this year. Detroit's offense was really good this year. Don't touch the offense, man. I love the way it is right now. I think they found a really good recipe that works. They stopped the run, find a way to stop the pass. You got Brian Branch at the safety position already, but you lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Let's firm up the cornerback position, Steve.
We're outside my top corners.
We're outside the top corners. A guy that I could see them taking, TJ Tampa.
Okay.
TJ Tampa's a pretty good player, but you know what? If they're... Now I'm looking at the corners on the
not
board.
like that.
It's too early. If this is the position where they're at, then they might trade out of this spot, Steve.
They could. It could be like a Penix selection, but I just feel like, if they went like interior offensive line or when Jerzon Newton with adding, the defensive additions that they've had.
I'm thinking someone to get after the passer. And the one I'm going to go with, I really like Braylon Trice.
Okay.
I really like Braylon Trice. I think he
You don't
can
think
fit.
too early for him?
I don't think too early for him. I think it could be, but if they're at a spot here at 29, it's the back end of the first round.
They don't care about being early.
They don't. They really don't care. You saw what they did last year. They
Yeah.
went Gibbs after Bijan, which ended up working out great for him.
Yeah.
And they went Jack Campbell. May have been a little early, but he's a great piece on that defense now. I think you firm out that defense. You go Braylon Trice, someone that can get after the passer. I think that really helps Aiden Hutchinson on the other side.
Could they have gone wide receiver here?
They really could have. With how deep it is, they really could have, but there's a world in which they can go receiver in round 2 still.
I also just feel like you want to give Jamison Williams like that opportunity still to try and come into his.
And I really think he will. I think he brings a really unique skill set to that offense.
Okay, I'm hoping to see it. Like, I want his success. I really do. This gives me Baltimore at 30. Like we talked about, there isn't too many of like the top guys left. This pick is going to come down to Jackson Powers Johnson or Graham Barton at the interior offensive line position. I feel like, that's something that they want to continue to solidify with all the injuries that they've had in that running back room. I'm going to go with Powers Johnson, a guy that can play center if they need to, but can transition to that guard position seamlessly. Had a lot of good play for Oregon this year.
Oregon, they produce good O-linemen, man. You got, Rayshawn Slater, I think. Penei Sewell. You got some really good offensive linemen coming out of there.
Absolutely.
It's a really good pick for Baltimore.
San Francisco.
31, San Fran. All right, hot take.
Okay.
Brandon Ayuk's not a San Francisco 49er this year.
Oh.
They make a move. They get a draft pick for it. Nothing too crazy because he's going to need a new contract, but I think they backfill, and I think a person that fits really well is Ladd McConkey here.
Okay.
I think Ladd McConkey, if there's no Brandon Ayuk, fits really well with a Debo, with a Christian McCaffrey, brings a different kind of skill set, and I think he can work really, really well in that offense, and I think Kyle Shanahan's the guy to make him thrive.
Not a big ego either, which is like, it seems like that's kind of like a little bit of an opposite direction from Ayuk, and I'm not saying he's a player with ego, because I don't think that by any means, but
he knows what he wants, though.
Yeah, and rightfully so, like he should. It's his opportunity to get paid, and this past season we talked about in the positional rankings was his best season to date, absolutely no doubt, and was it a better season than Debo had last year. At 32, with everything the way this worked out, this could very much be Graham Barton, the interior offensive line.
With Tooney and with Humphrey, that's a good interior O-line.
It is, but you know what? This is mock draft season, and it's only right that we get a little crazy. This isn't going to be Kansas City's pick, but I can't predict a trade here. I just know that there's this 32nd pick, if it fell out like this, would be Michael Penix Jr. So Michael Penix is going to be selected here at the 32 selection. It technically is Kansas City's, but I think somebody would move up to get that 5th year on the contract. But we're not predicting that, so Kansas City's going to take Michael Penix Jr.
Well, you're not getting off that easy because you're going right into the hot seat now. If it somehow is Kansas City, if Penix goes at 31 and San Fran trades out of that spot, who does Kansas City take if Penix isn't on the board?
If Penix is already selected, I don't think a team would move up to 32 to get Bo Nix. I don't think that would be the case.
Agree.
I think he's more of like the day 2 type of scenario. Started with the draft bets. I took his over on the draft selection over 32.5. So just backing that up, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I think no doubt that this would either be a Jerzon Newton, who was looked at as one of the top players still available. Peyton Wilson is the best linebacker in the class. It's just a little too early to take Peyton Wilson. I think the most sense pick would be Graham Barton, interior offensive line. But I don't think that they would shy away from the wide receiver conversation either. But like we talked about when we were breaking down like the quarterbacks in their draft process, they always go to like the offensive line or those defensive positions, and they address like their specialists a little bit later on.
Yeah, love that.
I really think like that's the direction that they would go. I don't think that they're looking to make a splash, and I think that they would rather add another player and move out of this pick, knowing that a team at 35, 36, 37 might want to move a couple of ahead and just move like a second or a third round pick next year to get here.
Awesome. Love the way this mock draft shook out. Worked out really, really well.
Any reaches you feel like on the board or any picks that you really weren't comfortable with?
It's just weird seeing Daniels go to 6, man. It's just is, but that's how it shakes out, right? Like, I really don't know that the Pats are locked in at Daniels at 3, and if they are, I'll just fucking eat my words. It's just how it goes sometimes.
Absolutely.
I think with trades, this looks a lot different.
Yes.
A guy that I think would probably go higher, 2 guys that I think would go higher, they're both on the defensive side of the ball. They both play the position. It's Arnold and Wiggins. I think both of those guys have the opportunity to go. I think Arnold has the opportunity to go top 10.
He has the opportunity to be the first corner off the board.
Seriously, 100% does. I think that Wiggins going all the way down to 19 is a fucking steal. I think he goes a little bit earlier than that as well, Steve.
It's just crazy to think that, like, if 4 quarterbacks are going to go in the top 11 and 3 wide receivers, that only gives you 4 other positions. So it's crazy. Like, in that top 11.
And with how deep O-line is?
Yeah, I know. So there's a lot of value here. But this is why we like doing these scenarios, so that when we're talking to you guys live on draft night, we broke down these scenarios and you came through the process with us. Go and check out Twon's page, Sandbox MMA, to hear everything from UFC 300. Been slanging on that, a lot of reactions, reviews for everything coming up, and some matchmaking going forward. We have a bunch of other episodes coming out. Make sure to stay tuned. You guys know the deal. Peace, love, 5 stars, nothing less.